What's going on, everybody? This is Living in Arizona Now, coming to you from Miami, believe it or not. I just went down to the Latin American countries of Belize, Mexico. I went to Grand Cayman. I went to Bahamas. Yeah. So, anyways, I'm here going to talk about Black Swan events because this is something that's been on my mind and some people have brought this up. How prepared is Arizona for Black Swan events? So, first of all, what is a Black Swan event? Well, it's an unpredictable event, just like a black swan, among other swans, is rare. It's a rare situation. You don't always see it. It's kind of like maybe like an albino whale, right? If you were to see an albino humpback whale, it's very rare. But they call them black swan events. They're characterized as something that's severe, impact is widespread. Some of us have already seen this in the last 2020, right, with the lockdowns and stuff. So we're going to go through some scenarios that can come up with the possibility of a black swan event in Arizona, things for you to consider, kind of like hedges against your investments or backup plans, contingency plans to things that you should really be thinking about. So one of the things that kind of comes up first and foremost is alternative currencies, alt currencies. Some alternative currencies are like silver, gold, Bitcoin, other cryptocurrencies. You know, you can get into this conversation about what's considered an alt currency, but some people would say ammunition is a legitimate alternative currency. Thank you to everyone who's smashing up the likes. By the way, guys, come over to Island Hopper TV if you guys want to keep up with me over there, because I know some of you are already asking what's going on, where I've been. But yeah, Island Hopper TV, that's where you can catch up with me mostly. But I still love Arizona, and that's where I'm from. So I'm going to be making these videos also here as time goes by. So alternative currencies, we just talked about a few of those. Uh, you have to consider that. And what that is basically if the financial system, which is basically all digital, shuts down, locks down, has a cybersecurity attack. They've said that cyber attacks are one of the biggest threats to global stabilization. That you could, I mean, if they get everyone on the internet and then all of a sudden just bam, they fry it. You could have it happen through an EMP attack, which is probably rare. It would probably happen through a cyber attack. How secure is the internet? That would put things like your online banking, all your digital cash. Like most people don't have cash on them. I mean, how much cash do I have on me right now? I think I have like $35. I have like four Bahamas dollars, you know? Um, so other alternative currencies could be like food, grain, beans, canned food, stuff like that. So that's the first thing that you should be thinking about for preparation. Is what do you have that can be currency in a black swan event kind of situation where a cybersecurity attack happens? Um, some people would say it's ammunition, but I wouldn't get too hard up on ammunition. Some people think that because they have 15 guns and a lot of ammo, that they're good to go. But you'd be surprised that doesn't. Ammo and guns don't put food on the table and sustenance, you know, water in your body. So, you know, it's great that you've got protection, but how far will that really get you? We don't know, right? So, another black swan event situation is war. So, we've got a lot of talk about war. Obviously, you know, the current world situation going on right now. People talk about World War III. How a lot of people think the United States will never be invaded or could never be attacked or something like that. But you know, it could happen. I mean, you could have terror cells in this country in 5 cities, for example. One terror cell building a bomb in a basement in Boston, another one building a bomb in a basement in New York City, another one building a bomb in Chicago, another building a bomb in Los Angeles, and then another building one in Dallas. And if they all plan 5 at once, boom, big bombs in basements that no one really knows about, that could really affect the US. I mean, that could, some people would say like, it's like cutting the head off the snake. I mean, who would be planning something like that? Would it be rogue terrorists, or would it be a state sponsored terror attack, right? State sponsored terror attack would be like a country, let's just use China or Russia as an example, that would be, using non-uniform personnel to basically, build these bombs inside of basements under the radar, undetected. Now that's something you have to think about. I mean, people really they think it's all it would never happen here, and I think a lot of Americans are kind of they've had it really good. I think America's had it really good for a long time, so we don't think it's possible to have a situation like what you see going on in Palestine right now, or what you saw happening in Syria, or what you had happening in other parts of the world. They think that in the United States we're immune to it, but all it would take is one day where something changed forever. It's like a 9/11 type event. We don't know exactly how it is. I mean, it could be something that I'm not even mentioning, but war, something like that, where they take out the infrastructure, and then the next thing you know, invasions begin and aerial attacks start. So you got to think through these kind of things, and how would you be prepared in those situations. So a lot of people think that they should be living off grid, or have an off grid setup, where they're in places like Rimrock, or places in northern Arizona or southern Arizona, where they're able to sustain outside of the big cities. Because in the big cities, that would be not a very good place to be in a situation where you have mayhem on the streets. And some people are saying, where to during invasion? Well, there's countries around the world that they say are safer than others, like New Zealand, for example. They say is a safe place because it's out of the firing zones. It's all the way in the south, so a lot of billionaires have bunkers there. But now they're saying that that's played out. I mean, we saw Mark Zuckerberg building a bunker in Kauai. And people say, well, what do they know that we don't know? I guess that's kind of why these things come up. But other people say you should have another country's passport. I mean, as someone who travels, I just reached my 77th country. So I've been to 77 countries now. I will say that I do notice that there is animosity towards Americans that a lot of Americans have no idea even exist. And a lot of countries, or a lot of people around the world, actually despise and hate America because they think we're prideful and egotistical and full of ourselves, essentially. So they want to see us fall. They want to see, it's like the bully, right? They look at America as the bully, and they want to see us fall. So we do have a lot of people who are gunning for us, believe it or not. I know that's not easy to believe or easy to stomach, but it's unfortunate because we have been a bit of the world leaders for a long time. Thanks to everyone who's crushing up the likes, by the way, 48 people. But yeah, how would you prepare if you can't go outside the United States? You have to stay in the United States. Well, I would say places like Montana, northern Arizona. I mean, places like that are going to be safer areas for at least. Who knows how long something like that would take, but the cities are not where you want to be. So thinking outside the box about where you can go outside of the cities. In Arizona, I would recommend places like the White Mountains. I talked about southern Arizona, places where they're not going to look under the rock. I mean, they're going to go for Phoenix or Tucson. And actually, Phoenix is a very, very unsafe place to be during a wartime. All they would have to do is drop like 2 bombs on any of our dams. If they dropped a bomb on Hoover Dam, that would completely devastate Phoenix. If they dropped a bomb on Roosevelt Dam, or Saguaro Lake, or Canyon Lake, if they hit one of those, if they just blew up 2 of those dams, we're not going to have water here in Arizona. It's that easy. I mean, tell me how it's not that easy. I mean, those are things that you have to think about. It's not about giving people ideas. I mean, if someone wanted to do it, they would do it. I mean, it's contingencies. I mean, they have to. That's what I'm saying. Like, you guys have to think about these things. You have to be realistic. Any military planner, any military strategist is going to have these ideas already lined up. It's war. I mean, that's one of the things is they always go after the water supply. That's like a old trick of the trade. Like, if you ever read the book Sun Tzu, or by Sun Tzu, Art of War, or any of these military strategic books, that's what they talk about, is going for the water supply, maintaining the high ground, all that stuff. JR says no one will ever do that, ever. Well, and I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news here, but what my main point is letting you know that sometimes things that you don't think can happen do happen. I don't think anyone really expected the world to lock down like they did in 2020. I don't think people in World War One expected World War One to escalate. I mean, if you look at the temperament or the attitude of Europe at the time of World War One, when the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand happened, much of Europe was kind of ornery. They were a little bit feisty. They were kind of like, yeah, you want war? Bring it to me, baby. They were like that. I mean, if you look at the history, that's kind of the attitude that we see in the United States, where people are like, you want war? Bring it. Bring it. Come on, let's go. But what happened was Europe got extremely humbled after World War One, but then they didn't get it enough. So World War Two happened. And ever since then, you've had Europe kind of always limping, hobbling around, and kind of just really a lot more meek than even the United States, because they've experienced some devastating world wars on their own soil. But like Brandon says, some people have no clue. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I don't think any of you ever really expected something like September 11th to happen. I know I certainly didn't, but I was too young for that anyway, because I was just in high school. I didn't really think about. I thought the world was just sunshine and rainbows as a 18-year-old back in the good old days of the United States in the 90s. I thought the 90s in America was a really nice time. The 2000s is when things kind of went awry, right? So next thing is, how prepared are you for lockdowns? In the event that they do usher in some sort of lockdown or some sort of security measures, martial law, so to speak, where are you going to work? Where are you going to get your income? Where are you going to get your food? How long can you sustain lockdowns for? And so a lot of people a lot of us have experience now with lockdowns, but that was pretty mild. I mean, I just recently read the other day that I guess in the lab in Wuhan, they're still making viruses, and I guess they have a virus that goes straight for the brain. And in the lab mice that they've killed, or in the lab mice that they've tested on, it killed every single one of the lab rats. And I guess the scientist who's working on the project said it's possible that it could be a spillover into civilization, kind of like what we saw with the last one. First thing everyone says is, well, why are we even playing with these? Why are we even doing these viruses in labs anymore? Why are they still doing that? And no one knows the answer, really. But the point is that COVID, I think for the most part, it was bad, but it could have been a lot worse, is basically what I'm saying. And it was bad. I mean, I lost my grandma to it. So it happened. So in lockdowns, how ready are you? Travel restrictions, for someone like me, my job is based on travel. I don't make money if I'm not traveling. I'm not earning income if I'm not traveling. So when something like that happens, my whole business comes to a freeze. A lot of people like you, most of you have normal jobs, I assume. So, who knows what it is? I mean, everyone's going to be impacted differently, whether you're working as a Uber driver or you're working as a construction man. These are things that you have to think about. Where is your additional income going to come from? Without government assistance. I mean, we don't know what the hypotheticals are. We can only like hypothesize what could be happening, right? Anyway, so with that being said, supply shortages. So like most of the food supply and a lot of the supplies in general have been kind of centralized to like one or two, three, four companies that basically run everything. And so they can control the whole entire supply chain. It's not like farmers in Costa Rica, where if the supply chain goes down, a bunch of farmers can start growing foods. Arizona is not a very fertile place. I mean, if you look at the foods that the Native Americans used to live off of when they lived out here, I mean, the things they ate were like mesquite tree seeds, prickly pear, saguaro, squash, beans, and a lot of the critters. I mean, who knows what critters? I mean, they probably did some fishing. They probably ate some javelina, probably ate some coyote. But none of you have eaten javelina. None of you have eaten rattlesnake, probably. So, and what, 6 million people in the desert trying to live off of all these things. I mean, you have to think about this kind of stuff during a supply chain shortage, where it weeks turn to months. So these are things that you just have to keep in mind. And then people turning on each other, like they call it a civil war. What happens in a civil war kind of situation? So a lot of this just goes back to getting out of the big cities, getting into rural land, having a piece of property that's sustainable property, not something that's in the desert where you can't grow anything. I mean, when it's 115 degrees or 120 degrees in June or July, you probably don't want to be on a 3-acre piece of land in Casa Grande with no water anywhere in sight. You get it? So a lot of you are probably like, well, yeah, actually, Arizona doesn't seem like the most sustainable place to be during a grid down kind of situation. Well, there are places in Arizona, but you'd probably want to be on a ridge line nearby a river or a stream, something that has an aquifer. And those places exist, but you'd have to go seek them out. And we can make videos talking about where those things are. But my big thing is, I don't think a lot of people really think this stuff through, because they've been in their ivory tower. It's every day, go to work, get in the car works, the gas station. I mean, if there's no gas, if there's no gas at the gas station, people are freaking out. Like, oh, the gas station is closed. Yeah, okay. What if all the gas stations were closed for a long time? Things you got to think about. Scott says, you hit the nail on the head. I think if doomsday happens, we will be our biggest enemy. Brandon says, New Mexico would be the place to be. JR says, I had to leave in summer. Jason says, we got to get along. I mean, yeah, you got to get along. Parrot Head says, javelina meat is scrumptious. Yeah, I would bet there's probably some parasites in that meat that you probably, I don't know. I don't know what's in javelina meat. Hampson says, crush up the likes. Yeah, crush up the likes, guys. Look up Jeff Lawton's Greening the Desert. If he can transform the Dead Sea Valley in Jordan, we can do it all over the Phoenix Valley. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I'm not so sure it's just happening in Jordan. I went to Jordan. I wasn't seeing a green desert, but I know it's happening in Saudi Arabia. I know Saudi Arabia, Egypt's doing the same thing. Egypt, I did see it in Egypt, and I did see it. Well, I know it's going on in Saudi Arabia. I've never been to Saudi Arabia. I've been to Egypt, and I went to Jordan, but I didn't see it too much in Jordan. Jordan is still, for the most part, I'm amazed how big Amman is, the former Philadelphia, because Amman, Jordan, is what used to be the Greek city of Philadelphia. There's a lot of people there, and there's like no water. When I was there, I was like, where do they get the water from, and how do they survive? Well, they were talking about the Bedouins. I guess the Bedouin people, they don't eat vegetables. So the people in the Arabian desert out there, they drink goat milk. The only type of vegetables they would ever consume. So they're mostly carnivorous diet. Not some vegans. Vegans don't have a chance in the desert. But there's they eat camel meat, camel milk, goats, whatever else is around. But the only type of veggies they get is herbs and tea. So they do have tea. That's about it. So, but like I said, I mean, I was surprised. I was like, where's the water for like 20, 30 million people here? It's a huge country with population, and Amman is probably 10 million people. Is wild boars and elk around there? Where? In Arizona? So in Arizona, if you go up into the Mogollon Rim, you'll see there's elk up there. There's deer. We got a lot of deer up in Springerville, up in the White Mountains. There's tons of deer up there. Tons of deer. That's why I'm saying, like, get up into the White Mountains, get up on the Mogollon Rim, get a piece of property up there. If you got to bug out, if you got to get out of the valley, if you got to get out, you got a place to go. You can live off the land up there. At the very least, you'll be eating elk meat. And yeah, having your ammunition and your guns are going to help you get those elk or deer. But down in the valley, you'd have, in order to get access to any sort of deer or anything, you'd have to go into the superstitions. You'd have to go up north into the Tonto National Forest. Anything south of that, going south of Phoenix, South Mountain, they're going to have a few deer, a few coyotes, but there's going to be so many people around that area trying to forage and scavenge for all that stuff. You'd really end up wanting to go out to the superstitions or Tonto. So someone said javelina meat is like bacon. Yeah, I don't know. Has anyone actually eaten javelina? Like like you guys keep talking about it, but I'm serious. I don't think I've known anyone who's eaten javelina. Old Taco Bell in Scottsdale going to be replaced. What are they going to replace it with? By the way, guys, if you're just tuning in, we've got some new people tuning in. Welcome. Thank you to all the new subscribers. I see you guys coming in. We were just talking about hypothetical events that could happen. We talked about lockdowns again, things to consider. But most of the conversation has kind of gone towards getting out of the big cities or having a contingency plan that allows you to get out of the big cities into places like the countryside, the mountains, the rural areas. You don't want to be in the big cities. I mean, I've been living in Mesa for a while. In a tense situation with lockdowns and stuff, you don't want to be in Mesa. Heck no. I mean, that place is going to be, you want to talk about a perfect breeding ground for a zombie apocalypse. I mean, if there's civil unrest, Mesa, Glendale, Mesa, Glendale, those might even be worse off than Phoenix, really. AJ says, I was totally joking. You couldn't pay me to eat that. Oh, that's good to know. A javelina is a peccary or a wild pig. It's a desert pig. It's got like wiry hair. The best way I could explain, imagine Timon or Pumbaa, but in the desert, kind of like that. In my last video, I showed you guys some javelinas. I was actually out walking around when I bumped into some javelinas. They say they're big rodents, huh? My wife and I are thinking near Grand Canyon Junction, off grid, or Silver Creek. What do you think? So you're talking out there by Williams? Williams is, no, it's not going to be good enough. I mean, unless you go up into the mountains out there by Williams. But again, that's the Mogollon Rim area. Because if you go across the Mogollon Rim, you're into Sedona, you're into the Verde Valley. The Verde Valley would be decent. It's just getting overpopulated. So you have to think about, but I mean, you could live off the Verde. I mean, in a grid down situation, you could just follow the Verde all around. You're going to have water, but how are you going to get clean drinking water out of it? Because it's mostly contaminated. So you'd want to be at the headwaters upstream. Oak Creek's so contaminated, you couldn't, I mean, Oak Creek, that, by the time it gets down to Oak Creek from past Sedona, even before Sedona, because of Slide Rock, I mean, there's E. coli in that water. You couldn't drink that. When I was in Belize, I was talking to some of the locals. They were saying that still to this day, they drink the river water in the summertime right out of the river. I was like, man, you can't do that. Most places, you can't do that in the United States unless you're closer to the aquifer up the stream. But where else are you going to get that? Parrot Head says javelinas can be dangerous. Yeah, they can. I mean, if you're going to, I walked right around like 10 of them right there. Didn't really miss a beat. I'm not the most brave person out there. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that, like, if I saw a mountain lion, then I'm going to be like, let's do it, buddy. No, because I'm going to be like, I got to get out of here. But with javelinas, I saw 10 of them. I didn't feel any threat. Even with coyotes, they say coyotes can be rabid. They can attack. If I see coyotes, I don't really get scared. Not saying that they couldn't attack, but I mean, all my life I've been around coyotes. They got desert dogs out there all day, every day. You just go on a golf course, you'll see 3 of them right there on a golf course hunting rabbits, and they're scared of people. So, javelinas, they'll come right up into your yard and eat your pumpkins during Halloween. um, so Marcelino says practice starvation. I mean, that's the thing. Like most Americans eat 3 to 4 meals a day, huge meals. The second they're without a meal, they're cranky, not happy. And it could get to a point where you only get a few meals a day. So you never know. But yeah, guys, I'm going back down into Latin America for Island Hopper TV. So come on over if you guys want to see what's going on over there. I've got like 3 channels over there. I do the Island Hopper TV Hotels channel, which is hotel reviews for those of you who are interested. This is not related to Black Swan events because life goes on. You know, you can't just wait for the Black Swan event to happen. You just have to be thinking about like, okay, if things happen, what way would I go? Which way do I go? But until that day happens, or until that moment happens, if it ever does come, you got to live your life. You got to keep going to work. You got to pay your taxes. You got to, do your vacations, live your life. But the point is, even though I'm doing that, I still have to think like, okay, what would be my move? What would I do? And to be honest with you, you can go through the hypothetical situations all day, every day in your head, and you still might not even be prepared to the point. So at the end of the day, someone said, we need to get along. We do need to get along. We need our leaders to get along with us. Like they need to stop hating us. I feel like leaders of the world, like hate the people. And I feel like the people now hate the leaders. So there's like, that's where the disconnect is. It's, obviously with the people fight each other. You have all these like different political ideals and all this stuff that people bicker about, but I feel like it's more of a class warfare, if anything, at this point. And it's basically the super rich people who run the world, not the people who have like $5 million in their bank account. Those are not the rich people I'm talking about, because someone with $5 million compared to someone with $5 billion, it's a big difference. So when someone has $5 billion, they can influence the world. But the people with the billionaires versus the non-billionaires, that's where I feel like there's a bit of a class warfare going on. And that, to me, seems like the most dangerous thing we have going. Robert says, you have a lot of good points. Scott says, yes, bingo. Brandon says, you said it. Kevin says, class war. The javelina are really cute. Javelina are not that cute. Maybe a baby javelina is cute. I've never, like when I see a big javelina, I'm like, that is one not cute rodent. I don't know, man. Yes, the 1% make us peasants. I mean, yeah, it's the haves and the have-nots. And even when I was down in Grand Cayman, Cayman Islands, that's where I was just at. Really beautiful place, by the way. In the Caribbean, they have a lot of these tax havens. Well, Grand Cayman is a tax haven for very wealthy Brits. And so what happens is the people who have the most money, they go to these tax havens. And so the really super wealthy people around the world don't pay taxes. They go to places like Bermuda. They go to places like Grand Cayman. They go to Dubai. They go to Monaco. They go to all these places. So who gets stuck paying the taxes? The guys and girls who got the middle down. We're talking, if you're making $100,000 in taxes, you're paying more than most billionaires. And if you think about all the taxes you pay, it's tax season. So this is on everyone's mind, right? And if you're a working class stiff like I am, your taxes, think about it. You pay someone to pay someone. So you got to pay your accountant. I've got to pay like thousands of dollars to an accountant so that they can tell me that I owe thousands of dollars to the tax man. And then when you do it, there's a possibility that that tax person who prepared all your stuff, even though you've paid them thousands of dollars, in the 10 or 20 different documents that they have to file for you, one of them might be off. And then they come knocking on your door saying, hey, this document's wrong. I've had it happen with the big man up at the Fed. I've had it happen with the state. Documents. And these are documents that I pay people to prepare for me, and they're still messing it up. These are professional accounting firms that are getting forms wrong. That's how complicated the world is today. And instead of going after the people who are in tax havens that aren't paying any taxes, who have a lot more money than you or I, they go after you or I. And then so it's like year round, the more you work, the more you have to pay. And the more it's like on your mind year round. It's something you can never get away from. And it's kind of haunting. Don't worry, pretty soon AI is going to do your taxes. Good. Yeah. I mean, that'll be great. Nothing against accountants, but it's just too much. It's too much, man. Too much. Because and the accountant's always so happy. They're like, "Hey, guess what? It's that time of year again, guys. We gotta circle back and get these taxes going. That's the time of year it is. So let's schedule a call. I'm very busy right now, but we'll make a time to figure out how much you owe." I'm just like, oh man, I don't want to talk about this for the next 3 months. And that's how long it takes to talk about it, like 3 or 4 months. And then before you know it, it's the next year, it comes around and go at it again. Intuit, TurboTax lobbying against simplifying tax so they can profit off selling their software. Yeah, I mean, then you get these lobbyist groups that, have built this microcosm economy on the side that requires things to be complicated. It's like the healthcare industry, right? It's like the healthcare industry is such a moneymaker. It's such a big part of the economy. I mean, how many people work in hospitals and stuff? They have to keep people have to be sick. It's like the law enforcement. It's like that whole prison economy, the whole law enforcement economy. If there's no one out there doing bad things, that whole thing shrinks too. That means a bunch of people who work at the prisons, correction officers. I mean, even if we had peace on earth, the military is not going to need to exist anymore. So, like they have all these industries, whether it be the military industry, the prison complex industry, accounting, taxation. I mean, all these industries are basically built into the economy. And it's crazy because if they go away, there goes a whole bunch of jobs. So people lobby, there's a bunch of lobbying for all these different things. And it's a necessary evil, I guess. AI lawyers, AI behavioral therapists. Yeah, but we're going to have to redo the whole society of how we do money because it's going to take pretty much everyone's jobs, AI, as you're talking about it. And, at that point, the only people who are going to run the world, it's going to be locked at that point. And the only people who are going to control the world are going to be the people who control the AI. And the people who control the AI, they might get to a point where they're like so wealthy, they're like, why do I even need these peasants anymore? And then, who knows what they'll do with all you peasants, all of us peasants, right? They'll be like, well, we got too many people out here creating waste and complaining and, driving on the roads and climate changing and polluting and all this stuff. I mean, how many people are there on the earth right now? Like almost 10 billion. And that number is expected to like double in the next 100 years. Yeah. If, in an era of AI, you really think those people running the only thing that could save us now, humanity, from not needing to cull some of the population essentially would be Elon Musk getting us to be multiplanetary. Because then it's like, hey, because then you go from not having enough people or having too many people to not having enough people because we're like, hey, we got to go colonize Mars. Hey, we got to go colonize, planet XYZ. And, if that starts happening, then they're going to be like, we need more people. We need more humans. We'll see. I mean, it's hypotheticals, but things that people think about, talk about, Has anyone seen any illegals out the Bullhead Kingman area? Illegals? We're talking about like human beings here. Have we seen any undocumented migrants? They're people too. I mean, I was down in Mexico recently. I was talking to people from Mexico, hanging out with them, and they told me that when they come across the border, they didn't even check in with immigration or nothing. normal people never even think that they do that. I mean, so if anything, you should be asking, how did that happen? How did they get across the border? I mean, they're people too. I mean, once you put a face and a personality to somebody that is considered illegal, you look at it a little bit different, especially once you've kind of related to them in the sense that you've had conversation, you've worked with them in whatever capacity. Because a lot of people don't realize, but the people who built your house, most of them were illegal. So almost every single one of you guys, if you're living in some sort of structure in Arizona, there was illegal migrant labor that helped build that house. Okay. Also, if you're eating any sort of vegetables and it was grown in San Joaquin Valley, which is the breadbasket of America, most of the people out there work in that breadbasket. So most of the food you're consuming is actually picked, harvested, and grown by illegals. I mean, so you can't sit here and get on your high horse and say, "Oh, well, this and that." I mean, it is what it is. Most of you are living in a house was built by illegal migrants. You don't believe me? Go to any job site when they're building houses in Arizona, building apartments, building condos, and go see if you can talk to some of those people that are building those. Because it's not a bunch of Americans building that. The only people on that job site that are American are typically like the developer, like some guy walking around with a hard hat on and doesn't have any scuffs on his boots and drives a big truck and talks a big game, but he's not the one out there pounding the hammer. um, you know, so I mean, these are things you got to think about. The second most abundant fluid on Earth is oil, and water is number one. The Earth has ocean of that stuff on tap. Okay. I just found out today the powdered cellulose is grounded wood chips and it's put into on shredded cheese. Really? I don't know. The foreman and the GC. That's it. Yeah. The foreman. I mean, how do I know? Because I get out there and I go talk to the people who are building the houses. When any of you guys who do what is this landscaping in your yards, or your HOA has some dudes come out and clean up your yard and weed whack and clean up the bushes, you think those guys are documented? If they think about it, think about it. I mean, so none of you guys here are free of the documented, undocumented labor. You're all reaping the benefits of it. Almost. I don't think any of you, unless you're like doing nothing at all, period, you're all reaping some sort of benefit from the cheap labor somewhere, whether it be in the food supply, whether it be in the construction, the home you're living in, somewhere, somehow. Eternal Trick says undocumented immigrants are crucial for our economy. I mean, yeah, someone's got, like, when you go to a hotel, for example, it's not some American person who's going to clean your sheets and clean your bed and clean up after you've had a hard night throwing up after partying with the boys and girls, bachelor party, bachelorette party, throwing up in the toilet, and some housekeeper's got to come along and clean that up. I mean, I've seen some of the most gnarly bathrooms. Someone's got to clean that up, and guess who it is most of the time? It's someone that doesn't have the means to get a higher paying job at the moment. So all you can feel is gratitude for that person that's got to do that, because you're like, oh my gosh, someone has to clean that. And that is a horrible thing to do. And man, I remember I seen one bathroom situation. I had to go to the janitor and I said, man, I want to thank you for all you do, because that's not easy to clean that up. And there's people out there that are just so sloppy and they make such a mess, and someone has to clean up after them. And honestly, a lot of times it is undocumented immigrants who are the ones doing that, because a lot of Americans are too spoiled to actually do it. So it's not about letting the whole world in either. I mean, you have to have rule of law, but you have to strike a balance. But at the end of the day, it's humanity. We're all humans. I mean, humans are the humans don't get along? They get along. There's wars. There's all these different things that come about. Disagreements between neighbors. It's really striking a harmony. How do we strike a harmony? But a lot of people don't want to go into that conversation because they're more content with this saying, "I hate everyone equally." That's like the cliche comment that someone that a lot of young people like to say these days is like, "Oh, I'm not this, I'm not that. I hate everyone equally." So it's like they take pride in the fact that they hate everyone equally or hate people. And I'm like, I don't know if we need to be harboring that or like growing that kind of mentality of like hating other people, because that's no way to live. I mean, it might sound cool to a young person to say that, but long term, we need people not to be like that. We need to be thinking like, how do we get along? Truthfully, I mean, it is what it is. What happened, Elizabeth? Looks like we struck a conversation piece with Elizabeth here. she's something struck a chord with her. I don't know what she said, but it's not hating outsiders, it's loving your own. No, I don't think anyone has said that you can't love your own people. And I think what most people are saying is that if you eat vegetables that were grown in the San Joaquin Valley and you go to the San Joaquin Valley and you walk around any of the farms and you realize that everyone working there, aside from the foreman or the leader, the superintendent, the manager or the owner, is illegal, undocumented. So if you're getting your food from there, you or anyone is benefiting from undocumented labor growing that food, because when it's 110 degrees in San Joaquin Valley, you or I are not going to be out there picking the tomatoes or digging up the squash or the potatoes or feeding most of the cows, you know? And like I said, the people who built almost all the houses in Arizona were undocumented laborers. It's not saying that I'm for undocumented anything. It's just saying that, these are people too. And the more we can rationalize that, the closer we can get to solving the problem that really exists. There is a demand for undocumented labor, cheap labor from foreign countries, but there has to be rule of law, right? So you have to really dial it in. Elizabeth says, "Speak for yourself." Well, I mean, hey, it is what it is. I, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm for illegal migration. I think that that's common sense to say that there needs to be documentation. So, having been to 77 countries, if I overstayed my visa at any one of those countries, they'll lock me up, right? So, how come the United States doesn't have any sort of system for that? Well, those are things that we have to get to the bottom of. But yeah, it's a balance thing, but it comes with wisdom. I think a lot of people have to have wisdom. James says, "Hello, I have a question. Since I live in a swing state, how do you feel about the political climate?" Oh man. Oh, that's another one of those subjects that's going to get people in the comments going, "Woo! You're trying to disturb the harmony, man." That's a comment that's a firestorm waiting to happen. It's like pouring kerosene on a on a bale of hay. I know what you're trying to do right there. Old Fashioned says, "Well, Mexico has some harsh immigration laws." Yeah, I've actually seen videos on YouTube where someone said they overstayed their visa in Mexico and they ended up in a Mexican prison for like 3 months. Like crazy, man. And they said it was terrible in there. Terrible. Yeah. Well, James, let me see if I can find the most diplomatic way to answer your question. It's 2024. It's an election year, and we're going right into the belly of the beast with this one. I mean, it's the firestorm is coming, and as we get into July, August, the only thing I can do for my mental health is stay away from that firestorm, because if I get too far into it, and believe me, I do dabble in it, but if I get too far into that, oh man, I'm not gonna be I'm gonna have probably high blood pressure. you know, I mean, so the only thing I can say is like it's at a breaking point right now where people are really kind of going like this. The country is dividing. I don't know, and the only thing that I think is, why can we not find a leader in this country who knows how to bring us like this? Why is that so hard? I think that's something that confuses me to this day, is why it's so hard to find a unifying leader. I mean, if you ask me, there's a guy by the name of RFK. I don't know if you guys follow RFK. I'm not going to sit here and say that there's any leader out there that I identify with 100%, because there's no such thing as a perfect politician or a perfect leader. But I follow RFK on Instagram, and that guy, man, he's really hard to listen to because he's got some sort of vocal issue, um, and he struggles to get words out. But the things he talks about are the closest things to common sense that I've seen. And from what I understand, he's a independent or something like that. So I feel like he's not very polarizing, but he gets attacked quite ferociously, more or less by he. I think he's a former, because JFK was a Democrat, and he's a descendant of JFK. His son or his father was RFK, or Robert Kennedy. Um, but the things he talks about are common sense. And, the Democrats attack that guy so ferociously, and I don't get it. I don't know. Do any of you guys follow RFK? I'm not seeing anyone even say, yeah, hey, I know RFK. Um, um, my dad said three things you don't ever want to talk about: politics, religion, and gossip. Yeah. Well, money or bank account, right? um, Gossip, that's a thing that the United States is. I mean, social media is like gossip central. If I open up my news feed on my Facebook right now, all I see is gossip. All I see is gossip. I mean, aside from vanity and gossip, those are the two things that I see the most of on Facebook. And that's why I think actually deleting a Facebook, or deleting Facebook, mostly it's Facebook, is good for your mental health. Like, you can actually like regain some of your mental acuity or mental health by getting off Facebook, because that's all you see is vanity and gossip. Um, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad on there. I don't see a value in Facebook at this point. There's no added value. Here's what I mean. Like, at least with YouTube, there's an economy on there. Like, you can make money as a YouTuber. On Facebook, you can't make money as a Facebooker. There's no such thing. And Facebook has gotten away with it for so long, where they're like, well, it's a free service. Oh yeah, well, so's YouTube. So's Google. And they have an economy where content creators make money. So if there's no real economy aside from a select few shareholders and Zuck making all the money, what's the value to it? Because all it's doing is dividing people. You know, oh, Facebook Marketplace, that's an economy. I'd rather use OfferUp. OfferUp's way better. For if you have something to sell, go on OfferUp. It's the new Craigslist. It's better than Craigslist. Um, Divided USA says RFK for president. Pamela says RFK is okay. I mean, like I said, I mean, no one's perfect, but if you go on RFK's Instagram, at least that's one thing that Instagram's got is RFK. I don't think he's on Facebook. It's owned by the same company, but I would say go to X, Twitter, but that's a toxic environment. I'm not sure if Elon, Elon talks this big game about free speech, this and that, and all this, but you get on X, it might be worse, and the gossip on there might be worse. There's some real crazy stuff on there. Ralph Nader, that's funny. I thought you were going to say Ross Perot Jr. No, you know who I do like that I've seen out there was Rand Paul. I seem to think he talks some common sense. But with politicians, you can never tell because they always kind of seem like they're a little bit sly. There's always like this slyness that I always sense in like most politicians. I see a little bit of sly, like just they're pumping a narrative. They're, but wow, look at that. See, the second someone brought up politics, bam, people come flying in with political conversation. and then the whole thing goes off track. So anyways, we can go back to talking about other things. Oh, anyone who talks truth, I mean, they're going to try and I was having this conversation in like Belize and stuff. Like Belize, man, that place, you want to go off grid, go to Belize, man. Go out to one of those islands in Belize because, people talk about how United States is the land of the free and all this stuff. Not saying you'd want to do this, but you can drink alcohol and drive your golf cart all over Belize and there's not going to be any problems. Not saying you want to do that. I'm just saying that, like, you do that in the United States, you're looking at a $10,000 fine, classes, courses. Obviously, you're endangering people's lives, so it's justified, right? But I'm just saying, like, people say, oh, America's the free country. I'm not seeing it. I don't really see it. I mean, if they say you got free speech, but you guys are all saying the second you start speaking the truth, well, bam, they're going to come in. It's like sending a warning shot across your bow. They're going to launch a torpedo right across your bow and say, hey, don't be doing that. And if you do that, they'll make sure the torpedo hits your bow. So, I mean, people talk about how the United States is so free, but I'm like, I mean, there's a lot of free places out there. And it doesn't seem like this is the best one anymore. I mean, you can't even, let's put it like this. You're not free to put solar panels on your roof. If you wanted to put solar panels on your roof, you're not free to do that. You can't move into a house in the inner city of Phoenix without an HOA. So you're not free to do that. You're not free to build a pool. You're not free to put an awning on your backyard without having to go to somebody. You're not free to do a lot of things. So to call us a free country anymore, I mean, you can't even go off grid and source your own water without permits and all that. You can't just go off grid and be a nomad or something out in the desert. I mean, there's a lot of places. If you just wanted to get an RV and just live out in the desert, there's only like a few places in the country you could do that, or in the woods or in the forest. I mean, if we were a real free country, you could do that, right? But it's not a free country. Sorry, I mean, if that offends somebody's going to be like, oh, yeah, we're free because we can complain about our president. That's true. America is one of the only countries where you can actually badmouth your leader. There's not too many places that you can do that. So if that makes us a free country, I'm like, I'd rather have more freedoms than that. Like, I don't really care about that. Quartzite. There's some places, you guys know Peter Santello. He made a cool video up in Utah. in southern Utah where he was hanging out with this dude who lives off grid in his RV, in his motorhome. He's legitimately doing it. But he said, there's the feds are always looking to lock it down, and it's just one section of the country where they haven't quite locked it down yet. And Slab City, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of time before they lock all that down. Thanks to the 136 people who smashed up the likes, by the way. Many countries you go to build your own house without permission. Oh yeah, like in the Philippines. In the Philippines, that's pretty common. Like people do that, like in the jungles and stuff. I mean, there's even wild tribes in the Philippines that I saw. Like when I was in Palawan, they have the people they're called Ita people, Aeta. They're little people. They live up in the forest, and if they see you, they're meek, they're humble, they're not like aggressive or anything, but they kind of scurry away. But they're wild people. They're like wild tribes in the islands out there. So I mean, if those are people that are existing tribes, sure, if you're a commoner, you can also do the same thing. Just pick a plot of land, and until some developer comes along and says you got to get off the land squatting. I mean, even in the United States, there is a lot of people who do that in the inner cities of Los Angeles and San Francisco and New York. There's tents, Portland. You drive down any of those downtown areas, you see people with tents just squatting. They're not paying rent. I mean, you're paying rent, $2,000 a month to live in the apartment, and right down below, 1 block away, is some people with 6 different tents just hanging out on the sidewalk, not paying a single penny. M. Bush says there used to be a tribe of Ita people in Subic Bay Naval Station. We gave our bikes to them when they closed down. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, because Luzon actually has a lot of Ita people. Philippines, hurricane, earthquake, tidal waves. Yeah, Philippines, and you forgot about volcano, because when I was in Philippines, I've seen pretty much all of it in one trip. I mean, what was it? Taal volcano, Taal. I was in Subic Bay, actually. It was my first time in Subic Bay. And I woke up in the morning and there was a bunch of volcanic smog in the air. I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was like a misty day, but it was really hot. And there was like volcanic smog. They call it VOG, VOG, volcanic smog. And it was all in the air. And I went on Facebook. Yeah, I found out on Facebook. But they were like talking about how they closed down Manila Airport because Taal was getting ready to erupt. So instantly I'm like, oh my God, right down the road is Mount Pinatubo. Well, he's from Subic Bay, so he knows about the whole thing with Mount Pinatubo because they closed down Clark Air Force Base, I think in like was it the 1990s or the 1980s when Pinatubo erupted? But yeah, then you get the hurricanes. They get massive typhoons over there, like Cat 5s, and they just if you're on one of those islands that are facing the Pacific towards the east, that's not where you want to be. That's like Leyte, even Luzon towards the east, where Manila is really. But Palawan, it's pretty safe. Palawan's actually one of the more safe places to be because by the time the storm arrives in Palawan, it's already had to sweep over most of Visayas, and it's already been, basically destroyed by mountains and stuff that, tear apart hurricanes. But they do get some earthquakes. Jay says 90s. Yeah, okay. So in the 90s was when they closed down. Philippines has cyclones, which are just as bad, if not worse, than hurricanes. Yeah, cyclones. What's the difference between a cyclone and a hurricane? One spins clockwise and one spins counterclockwise. I don't know exactly, but obviously here in Florida right now, it's not hurricane season. But down in the Caribbean, like in the Bahamas, they don't really build nice infrastructure in the Bahamas or anywhere in the Caribbean because, well, they should, right? Like they should have more strong, sturdy buildings, but a lot of the stuff just gets destroyed by hurricanes when it comes in. Is there any Filipino population in Phoenix? Yeah, there is. That's another thing that's interesting is in Cayman Islands, there's a lot of Filipinos. So you obviously have a lot of locals, which most of the workers in Cayman are from Jamaica. But there's also a large population of people from India and a large population of people from Philippines in the Cayman Islands. And it got me thinking because a lot of the countries I've been to around the world have a large population of Filipinos. They call them OFWs, overseas foreign workers. And I know a lot of Filipinos because in the Philippines, it's really easy to meet people. Like you can make so many friends in Philippines, like just everywhere, right? But yeah, so I know a lot of OFWs who've been in Japan, Dubai, Qatar, Singapore, Caribbean. So it's kind of interesting. Let's talk real important things, not the past, please. It seems those days are gone forever. Which one, Julie? A lot of American men are going over to the Philippines to find wives. They call them passport bros. Yeah, I've in being that I work and travel, I know about like all these different movements. They have like the passport bros, they have digital nomads, backpackers, retirement people who they call them expatriates. But I do know about the passport bros. They're basically men who are in the United States who go overseas to find a wife. And it doesn't always end good, right? So, because they get into these situations and then they bring the woman over and then she's not happy. She wants a divorce and the guy loses half of his retirement or something. Parrot says, hello, sounds like a 90-day fiance on TLC. Oh, dude, I've seen this one guy. Okay, so speaking of 90-day fiance, there's this guy. I think his name's Ed. You guys know Ed? Oh, man, he's like, oh my gosh. This guy thinks he's a Mac daddy, really does. And the way he communicates with these women is just unbelievable. And it makes for incredible content. And I think the guy's serious. I don't even think maybe now he does it for entertainment, but when he was first starting out, he went to the Philippines, and in the Philippines they do a bath where they take the bottle of water and they put it over your head. You shower out of a pot, right? You don't shower out of and you go to the bathroom. Well, anyway, the water was cold and she put the water on Ed's head and he just broke down like a child. He couldn't handle the cold shower and he needed to get the heck out of the Philippines. So he wanted to date one of the Filipinos, but then when he went out to the rural part of the province or whatever and found out that's how you take a shower, he was ready to get the heck out of there. But it was just a funny little episode. You guys know Ed? Does anyone here know Ed? JR says, you get a woman overseas and then you get the whole family. Oh, that's true too. Blue Bunny, Liz dumped Ed. Yeah, Liz, that was it. Liz, I mean, you could after this YouTube, you could go on YouTube and just type in Ed from 90 Day Fiance highlights, and this guy is just a vein of gold that'll just have you laughing. Like, there's not too many things that just get me laughing and cracking up, but this guy is hilarious. There's one guy on Instagram that I watch. He knew he came out of nowhere. His name's Supa. Big Supa in Arizona, right? But this guy's name is Super Ray. I don't know if any of you guys follow Super Ray on Instagram. Oh, that guy gets me cracking up too. Like, there's some things that'll get me cracking up. The other guy that I follow is Johnny Hamcheck. I only bring this up because I'm just letting you know, like, when I'm at an airport or something, I open up the app and I got nothing better to do than basically let time fly by. And I don't want to sit there like this the whole time at the airport for 3 hours because we were delayed on American Airlines today for 3 hours. Literally 3 hours. It was a Boeing 737 that had a mechanical issue. what are you going to do for 3 hours? You're going to look at your phone at some point. But those guys, they can pull you out of a miserable mood. You guys know Johnny Hamcheck? Stealth Camper. I haven't heard of Stealth Camper. Super Chicken. No, I haven't. Someone said Ed who? Ed, dude, the Ed from 90 Day Fiance. I don't know his name. I don't know his full name. He's a total putz, though, I tell you. He's a putz. He's funny. What about Angela on that show? I actually don't really watch 90 Day Fiance. I know that like my mom did. I think she was the one who introduced me to Ed by posting something on Facebook. Hey, Bosnia, what's going on? Julie says homeless drugs, Phoenix police, and they don't do it. It's like Grand Theft Auto mixed in with Resident Evil. Yeah, dude, there's actually a few pages on Instagram I've noticed, like Arizona Gram and some other Arizona Phoenix related, like Phoenix happenings on Instagram, and they post some of the craziest things that happen in Arizona or in Phoenix. I saw this one video. This guy on Christmas Day was so drunk, he was drifting in the parking lot after walking his dog, and he had his door open and he flew out of the car. He flew out of the truck after he was drifting, and I was just like, what is going on in Phoenix? I mean, I'd have to check. I'd have to see if I could find the name of that channel, but it's all on Instagram. I don't do TikTok. Some of you guys probably do TikTok, but I don't really. But what's it called, Julie? It's called, what's the name of that? Julie said, hey, Jane, what's going on? Yeah, we got 155 likes going now. I can keep going. It's just burning time on a Friday night in Miami. That's where I'm at right now. All the flights in Latin America and the Caribbean go through Miami for the most part. Like I was trying to go to Costa Rica to San Jose or Liberia, and because I was in Cayman. It's right down there in the south, just off the coast of Quintana Roo, almost like Belize, right? Deep south. The only flights were to go to Kingston. I wasn't going to do that one. I wanted to go to Montego Bay, but not Kingston, because I didn't want. I've never been to Jamaica, and I heard it's kind of dangerous in Kingston. So I was like trying to get a flight into Montego Bay. They had like one flight that goes to Barbados, but it was like a horrible like timing and price, so I didn't take that. But there was no flights going to anywhere, not even Panama City, because the one going to Panama City was one flight a day and it was booked. So everything seems to go through Miami. So like I couldn't. So if I wanted to go deeper into Latin America, like from Tulum, I went from Playa del Carmen, I went to Tulum, then I went to Belize, and I was like, okay, I'll keep going further south. I was going to skip Nicaragua and Honduras and go to Costa Rica. I was just going to fly. Well, they didn't have a puddle jumper that did it. So I had to go back from Belize to Miami. And then by the time I was in Miami, I'm like, oh man, I already went back north again. So I'll go into the Caribbean. So I went to the Bahamas. And then from Bahamas, I was trying to get flights going around. And then I ended up going down to Cayman Islands because I was like, all right, I'll start working my way south and I'll be able to easily get to Jamaica. No, couldn't do that. So basically everything goes through Miami, and Miami's expensive. The airport is super crowded. I mean, it's got to be one of the most crowded airports in the country. People are saying, because I was looking online, I'm like, how is Miami the most busy airport in the world? Like that's kind of the vibes I was getting in Miami. Phoenix Terminal 4 at where American Airlines is, it gets quite congested in there. But Miami, they say it's not even in like the top 10. I'm like, dude, it's the capital of Latin America. And I mean, only in Miami do you see people when you're getting off the plane, like crowds of people with stuffed animals and balloons. You see it a little bit in Phoenix. You see it a little bit in like other places. But what you see in Miami, every time I get off the flight in Miami, there's always like a whole huge crowd of people welcoming their loved ones back, kind of like the way it used to be in the United States, but that's how Latinos are. Like when you come back, the whole family shows up to welcome you with stuffed animals and hot air or air balloons. And so what I'm saying is Miami is like the capital of Latin America, legit. Like you got all types of people here, Cubans, Colombians, Argentina, Brazil, even a lot of like UK people here. I'm noticing a lot of people from UK are coming to Miami more so than anywhere else in the United States. Nowhere like in Arizona or California, you don't really meet people from the UK, right? But in Miami, all these hotels I'm staying at, lots of British people, lots of Italians. Miami has got to be like the new big thing in the country. But with that being said, it's uh, expensive and super crowded. So you can't really enjoy it because it's when it's super crowded like that and it's expensive, it's not very enjoyable. I mean, South Beach is so expensive. Tomorrow, my plan is to go to Little Havana, Coral Gables, maybe Biscayne Bay, maybe Fort Lauderdale in the latter part of the day, and that'll be about it. But because I'm making a video, best things to do in Miami, I'm halfway done with it. I did half of it last time I was here about a week ago, so now I got to do the other half. I can only do like 24 to 48 hours in Miami before I'm like, I got to get out of here. People think, oh, it's so cool. It's good for about 24 to 48 hours, and then it's no good. I hear they have good tacos in Florida. So the best tacos are always in Mexico. I mean, when you go to Mexico, you're and you come back to the States, none of these tacos up here are going to compare. The one thing I did have here that was really good was a Shake Shack, had a burger and fries, cheese fries. It was a Korean style burger at Shake Shack. And Shake Shack's a fast food joint, right? Or maybe fast food, partially fast food. It's like medium food. Oh man, it was like the most delicious burger and fries I've had ever. So I mean, that's one thing that they did good here in Miami is burgers. But tacos, if you compare tacos here to tacos in Mexico, I was just in Quintana Roo in Yucatan for 10 days or whatever it was, maybe like 8 days, and I was eating tacos every day. And come back to the United States, start eating tacos. I'm like, this is not tacos. Like this. If Americans think that they got tacos down, go down in Mexico. That's some real. I don't know what it is, man. How they do it, but carne asada just tastes better. Kevin says car stolen from my home in Miami or in Florida. Yeah, they are, Parrot Man. Yeah, I was talking to some people about. I always talk to the Uber drivers because they're the most chatty people. Like especially in Miami, like you get into Uber, some of them might not speak any English, so you have to un poco español or un poquito español. But and I speak enough Spanish. I know words like mucho gente, or I can speak a little bit. Yo soy poquito español, or anyway. But if they speak English, they'll tell you the whole lowdown on Miami. And Miami is just booming right now. I tell you, it is literally booming. It is a boom town. Jane says, Globe Miami. Yeah, Globe Miami is a place. Just wear a bright shirt or vest, you good, and run the neighborhood all night. The sun here in Miami is the most bright sun I've seen since Australia. Like for me at least, I get out in Miami at like 11 and I just start walking around South Beach. I have to wear sunscreen. Like otherwise I'm getting zapped. If I'm outside for longer than 2 hours in that direct sunlight, I'm getting zapped for sure. And I've, I've been around different corners of the globe, and I know when a sun's hot and when a sun's not. The sun in Miami is blistering hot. It's hotter than the sun in Arizona. It is. What I mean by that is it's like if you take the direct sunlight right now in Phoenix versus the direct sunlight in Miami right now, because it's also winter down here in Miami. The direct sunlight in Miami is super crazy. It is. Yeah. He says I took one shower, never dried. I don't like it. In like September or from probably like May until September, Miami is uninhabitable for me. It's too hot. Between the humidity and the super bright sun, it's not very pleasant. It's not very pleasant. No. But this time of year, Miami's all right. It's closer to the equator. I would say that's not necessarily the reason why Miami's hot or intolerable. It's not really too close to the equator because if that was the case, then Costa Rica should be cooking, right? And Costa Rica, I don't feel like the sun's that intense down there. They have an intense sun in Costa Rica, but nothing like what they got in Miami, which is crazy because the brightest sun I've ever experienced was in Melbourne, Australia, Melbourne, and that's not close to the equator. That's actually kind of close to Antarctica. So I don't know what makes a sun hot or bright like that. They used to say the ozone layer, but that whole concept, you don't even hear about the ozone layer anymore. Remember in like the 90s, burning holes in the ozone layer. Whatever happened to that? Whatever happened to that conversation? Like it got replaced real quick. But that was like the big thing in the 90s, right? Must be the reflection of the water. It could be the reflection of the water. I feel like there's low pollution here also because in some cities like Bangkok, for example, they have a lot of pollution in the air, which kind of creates this like protection from direct sunlight in Bangkok. So here in Miami, they have like very low pollution. Like oftentimes I'll see very blue skies, no soot, or I'm not saying it's not there. Obviously, it's a big city, so there's going to be pollution, but because there's no like nothing, no particles in the air filtering out this direct sunlight, it's just straight boom, right on you, zap. Mark says the ozone layer closed last month. Bill Pike says Williams is nice. Hit up Nanny's restaurant when you're there. Is Ashfork and Williams a safe place? Yeah, it is. Ashfork and Williams is very safe. Well, it's safe as long as you don't upset the locals. Because a lot of people have to realize when you go to those small towns, it's a tight knit community. It's a small town community, and all it takes is doing one thing that could irritate one neighbor, and you're the new guy in town. It's kind of like being the new kid in school. So that's a potential problem that could manifest into a bigger problem is being in a small town where you're an out of towner and you upset the locals. Then it might not be as safe. What I mean by that is because what is safety, right? It's a multitude of different things. It's not just getting murdered or mugged, right? It's like, is it a safe place to work? Is it a safe place to feel at peace, right? Because at the end of the day, that's basically what you're seeking is peace, right? Peace and quiet. And that's something about small towns anywhere, but small towns in Arizona in particular, in this case, Ashfork and Williams. Yeah, I mean, it's a small town community. And if you irritate the locals, it might not be a safe place for you to find peace and quiet because you could come up against some resistance. Roman says, to what I have watched, Sholo is a cool place in Arizona. I love it. Sholo is a nice place. See, the thing is with like a small town, like say under 10,000 people, slow growing, hasn't really taken off. Not a lot of foreigners there or outsiders. That's where you're going to come across this local vibe, and the local vibe might not always be as friendly, especially if it's below 5,000 people. But in a city like Prescott or Flagstaff, you have a little bit of like a small town atmosphere. Flagstaff's becoming a city now, but it's still under 100,000 people. They're used to outsiders, whereas Williams not really used to it, and Ash Fork certainly not. What's going on, Deacon MMA? Marcelino says, I have a RV space available in Golden Valley, Arizona. Okay. What, are you trying to rent out your RV? Or are you near Kingman? Yeah, near Kingman. Thanks to 168 people who have smashed up the likes. Now someone's messaging me. I've been getting a lot of these like messages from people I do not know who they're like, hey, you want to do dinner tonight? I'm like, who are you? And I'm like, I don't even know who you are. And then they send me a picture and I'm like, I have no idea who you are. You have the wrong number. And then like 2 days later, I get a new call from another number. Like right now I'm getting a call from, or a thing from someone who says, oh, okay. Oh, this is someone who's contacting me about Island Hopper TV. Okay. I thought it was another one of those like randoms. Yeah, well, what I'm trying to figure out is how to like get rid of, how do these people get my number? And I think they get my number when like you sign up for like at a hotel. Sometimes the hotels tell you to put down your contact information, your address, and your phone number. And I think like someone like farms that data and like gives it away on the internet. And then once it gets out, it's like, because I get these calls from people trying to like sell me all sorts of different things, tax relief, like daily, like Google listings, like putting me on Google, or like $40,000 for each employee, kind of things like this. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I get those calls every day, voicemails, and I'm trying to figure out how to get rid of it. I guess I got to change my my phone number or something. Bensky's, thanks for the super chat. Hey Jeff, want to do dinner tonight? Oh, I just ate, man. Last thing I want to do is dinner. I had a Wagyu burger for $26 here in Miami. It was good. The fries were not so good. Thank you, Blue Bunny. The space is for rent. Yeah, Firefly. How do I get a burner phone? What is that? When you realize everything they are doing is on purpose, it makes sense, says American Patriot. All right, guys, I'm gonna go hit the shower and get ready for sleep because it's 11:20 here in Miami. Thanks for watching. Thanks for smashing up the likes. See you guys on the next one. And yeah, we're gonna make some more videos. I think the next one's gonna be best investments in Arizona. So stay tuned for that. See y'all.